We're gonna be doing a lot of like really cool workshop stuff today, and we're gonna be getting vulnerable. I'm gonna be asking questions, but I will never point somebody out, okay? Did you just all of a sudden go, I will never look at you and say, you answer me, please. I encourage you to be as vulnerable as you'd like, because at the end of the day, we can only be vulnerable when we feel safe, right? That's the thing that a lot of people miss, is that vulnerability and safety have to go hand in hand in order to make it work, right? So before we even do anything, I want to preface by when I ask questions, I won't point anybody out, I won't ask anybody what they're thinking, but I would really encourage you, if you feel safe, to raise your hand and give us some of your experience. So I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Alyssa McMasters. I am a confidence coach. I help individuals and businesses gain confidence. And what that looks like for me is helping reduce imposter syndrome. When I say that word, are you like, What that looks like for me is helping teams understand their value in a way that feels authentic to them, right? Because we are of value no matter what. Regardless of what we do, regardless of what we say, regardless of our job or what we do, we are of value. Now, before I started confidence coaching, I've been doing it full time for about 2 years now. And when I first started confidence coaching, I had about a decade of experience in sales and marketing for film, tech, and advertising. And why I got into confidence coaching is I saw so many fantastic people, many of you are in this room, who just have all of the knowledge, all of the expertise, all of the talent, and all of the charisma to be so successful, but there's this little nagging voice that continues to pop up telling you you're not good enough, telling you you don't belong, telling you that all of the reasons who you are is not enough for this world. When I say that, does that resonate with anybody? Yeah. Yeah.
Walked in the read sentences.
Pardon me?
I walked in with a read sentence.
You did. Just raise your hand and pretend we know what I'm talking about. So when I really sat down, I was like, why is this happening, right? And how am I confident, right? When people ask, like, how can you walk into a sales room and make a sale that easily? How can you walk into a room with people that are, quote unquote, higher than you and be able to have conversations? And I thought about it and I was like, a lot of fucking work. Yeah. A lot of deconditioning, the conditioning that tells me all the reasons why I'm not good enough. And when I sat with it and I talked to all these different people who are, again, C-suite executives, musicians, famous people, they all have the same thing that they think, either I don't know when my team is gonna figure out that I have no idea what I'm doing, or I don't belong at this table. I have no idea why I was invited. I have no idea why people would even wanna listen to me in the first place. And it's so interesting to hear this because it's not just one person saying this, it's not just an intern saying this is CEOs saying this. Right? This is celebrities saying this is musicians saying this. People who you look at and you think, well, you must be wildly confident. But there's a conditioning that tells us all the reasons why we should pretend and why we should think we're not good enough. Who is afraid of being confident because it might come off egotistical? Yeah. And there's a comment I hear all the time, they're like, well, I don't want to seem cocky. But what would it look like if we did have a little bit more ego, right? What if ego was safe with us? What if there's a lot of people in this world who have a lot of ego and make the decisions, right? We talk about the politicians, right? What if we just had a little bit more ego? What would that look like? And in my case, what I've seen is it creates a better world, right? So confidence, to me, is about deconditioning those conditionings and finding actionable steps that we could do to start building on that confidence. It's not about looking in the mirror and saying, like, I love everything about my body, right? That's just silly. But it's about looking in the mirror and saying, I own a body, and maybe that's enough, right? Maybe that's enough for me to move forward. Maybe that's enough for me to take that job, to take that gig that I didn't expect to take, right? Maybe just me being around, being alive, me being here is enough. So let me give you a story, an example of when this happened to me, and I was like, holy crap, I don't deserve a place at this table, okay? About 6 years ago, I was asked to be the public relations specialist for a documentary film crew that was going to Liverpool to interview all of the 1960s rock stars. Yeah. And I was like, I'm like 25 years old. I have nothing in common with these people. These people are all, again, from in their 60s, 70s, and they all like helped build the Beatles, right? Ended up interviewing Pete Best, and I'm like, who am I to be doing this? And I sat with it and I was like, who am I to be doing this? I don't have the skills to do this, but maybe instead of thinking I'm fantastic, thinking I'm the best person for this role, maybe I can just get a little bit more neutral. Maybe I can think, I have skills, right? I have the ability to connect with people. Like, maybe that's enough. And as I started interviewing these people, and the people who I thought were so influential, because they are, I sat at them and I said, like, what is your biggest issue, your insecurity? And they said, well, I just don't think that I belong in the room. I don't think that I belong, I don't have a seat at the table. I'm not good enough. I have no idea why people even listen to me in the first place. And as I've met more and more musicians and talked to musicians in Calgary, a lot of them, I hear the very, very similar things that I heard in Liverpool. I don't know why people are listening to me. I don't know why I was even popular in the first place, right? So today, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do 2 different types of exercises. One is gonna be more of a mindset change. The other one's gonna be super, super tactical. How does that sound? Sounds good? Okay. Because to me, it's really nice to say affirmations. That's great, right? And affirmations work for a lot of people. But for some people, including myself, I'm just like, I don't really want to look in the mirror and tell myself I'm beautiful. I want to find ways that I can actionably make changes to be a better version of myself and to say yes, even if I feel yucky. Even if I don't feel like my body looks that great that day. Even if I'm like, I have not the experience to do this. I just want to find ways to eventually do it anyways, feel that fear and do it anyways. And when we talk about these insecurities, I think the most important part that I want you to remember today is you're allowed to have these insecurities. These insecurities have a place in you. We're not trying to take them away, right? We're not trying to tell them that they're not important. We're not trying to pretend that they're not there. Because what happens is then they fester in our body and then we get different kinds of ailments, right? We get anxiety and depression and a whole whack ton of stuff when we say that those insecurities aren't there. So instead today, I want you to start thinking about what if that insecurity has a space in me? What if that insecurity is okay? And how can we work past it anyways? So again, I'm going to continue by saying that I will not call anybody out, but I am going to start asking some questions. First question. What did you think when you decided to come to this workshop today? Was there anything in mind? Were you nervous, excited? What came up for you? Yeah.
I knew I definitely needed to come to this workshop.
Okay, great. Would you like to get deeper or do you want to stop there right now? Beautiful, love that. Love that. I saw your hand up as well.
I'm a substitute teacher, at least by designation of paperwork. I've had 2 very difficult afternoons in the last week, and with both of them, it was one of those things where it's like, I know I'm good at what I'm doing, but like the room that I'm in isn't good at what it's doing, if I can put it that way. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a weird like role reversal, but it really does feel, it's just like, why am I here? Like this isn't where I fit or belong. Like obviously what the room needs is not what I can provide. So even though on paper it should technically be. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And something you said, should, right? To me, the idea of should is the killer of pleasure, right? As soon as you say I should or shouldn't do that, that's like saying, well, maybe I should listen to the rest of the world and listen to everybody else other than myself. So thank you for sharing that. That's really special. Anybody else want to share? Yeah.
I feel like I have a lot of personal confidence, but translating that to stage, I think is what I was curious about. Like, how do you, when you take away some of the things that I feel like I'm really confident in my non-stage persona, you can't just, be out there doing those things for 45 minutes at. So how do I translate that confidence that I have on my day-to-day into stage?
Yeah. Hey, thank you for sharing that. We're going to touch on that a little bit today too. Because the hard and exciting part for musicians is that you're both an individual and a business at the same time, right? And that's really challenging to try to figure out what that looks like and how you can still be authentic, right? So how many people, we'll talk about kind of what your role is, but how many people have felt like, well, if I sell myself, it's going to sell out. Yeah, if I sell myself, I guess my art should speak for itself, right? But we're in this space where we're both an individual and a musician, and a business. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So hand raised back there too.
Yeah, my name is Lenore. I'm a self-imposed confident person.
Great.
So I've learned because of the gray. I've learned and am fairly confident, and I observed since yesterday a lot of the people would require a little bit of coaching from an expert who can take them from what they think they can't do to maybe imposing upon themselves what they should do for their craft. So I'm here to learn too, but also see the engagement from the audience, and hopefully they engage with you.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming. So now let's kind of get into also the exercises that we're going to do today, because I want to preface them so that we kind of know what's coming up, because there's also nothing worse than like kind of being in it and then like kind of being worried about like what's coming up, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build a neutrality ladder for ourselves. So we're going to find that insecurity, right? And then we're going to start getting 10% kinder at a time, because we do not need to feel fantastic every day. That's just impossible. But instead, we can feel that 10%. And the reason why we do this is it unleashes a whole bunch of different hormones, right? And those chemicals, both oxytocin and dopamine, right? When we're kinder, the kindness hormone, it releases that oxytocin, which actually changes the neuroplasticity of our brain, right? So as we slowly start doing this, this is how we can make real change, right? Not just looking in the mirror telling us that we like ourselves, but real change that starts from our brain, right? Now, we're gonna get into this. The next one we're gonna do is we're gonna do something super tangible, and we are going to write our own value proposition, okay? What that looks like is, again, you are of value regardless of what you do. But at times when somebody asks you, well, what do you do, right? A lot of the answers that I hear is, I'm a musician, right? I hear the what, not the why, right? I hear maybe you play country music, or I play a guitar, or whatever that looks like. But I don't hear, I do this because of this, and this is why it's important to you. So we're gonna build that out today so that when somebody asks you what you do, you have a really cool value proposition that you can share, because confidence comes from mindset change, and it also comes from preparation, right? Comes from 20 different areas, but these are two that have worked really, really well. So we're gonna do the first exercise. I want to know where you are in the music industry. Are you a musician? Raise your hand. Okay, so mostly musicians in here. How about a producer? Any producers? Producers, beautiful. How about like publicists? Kind of the back end of the music. What about, who else do I have? Engineers? Engineers, yeah. How about videographers? we got one in the room. Yay, that sounds great. Beautiful. And since I have many musicians in the room, I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what would having more confidence do for your life, for your craft? What would that look like for you? We can either think this, rhetorically, or if you want to share, I'd love to hear it too. Yeah.
Kind of oh, sorry, was it your hand?
Go ahead.
Oh,
yeah, both of you.
Just very straightforward kind of thing. It would probably lead to, just more talking with people, leads to more contacts, more clients, more networking. It just expands your circle off the bat, which would then grow your business further.
Beautiful.
Which leads to more practice, which leads to more skills, which leads to more networking and more clients, and the cycle continues.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. With networking, who does networking make want to throw up? Anybody? Okay, I see you. Networking is hard, right? And it's hard, because most people who like to network, people are like, I love it because they're extroverted, right? And confidence and extroversion sometimes get confused, right? And extroversion is not confidence. Those two things. You don't have to be extroverted to be confident, right? A really good tip that we can do is when we're networking, find that really confident friend to kind of bring you into those situations, right? Kind of ask them, like, can you come in and open up the doors for me, right? Let them do the work that they enjoy doing so you can do the work that you enjoy doing, right? So we talked about the networking piece of things. Yeah, we want to be able to if we have more confidence, we can build more connections, build more community. How about yourself?
Well, I've definitely been a really confident person in my life. I mean, probably mostly from masks, mostly.
Okay.
I've digested that in the last 5 years. But, so I'd be a person that'd be, really out there, like this high frequency in people's faces and getting shit done. But I'd suffer after by, did I say too much, or did I, monkey brain starts attacking me, so then I'd isolate, and, all these other bad habits from monkey brains in there. So I've used medication and everything, but it's still there. I'm human, right? So that's why I came to the workshop.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And this happens with neurodivergent people. This also happens with non-neurodivergent people, right? Where we have this struggle of, again, that almost I'm gonna say call it the Sunday scaries, right? But by networking, right? We're like, oh man, I might have said something really dumb, right? And we sit on that. So it's not about not having that feeling, that's okay, right? And I think so many of our society tries to push that down, the toxic positivity, right? Being like, just pretend nothing's wrong, you did nothing wrong. Maybe you did. Maybe there was something that you said that you're like, ooh, that might have not been great, right? Instead of just pretending that everything's fine. But what if we're like, yeah, I did say that, and people make mistakes, right? And we allow ourselves to get to that point. So thank you for sharing. But I have seen, like in the last year or so, the neurodivergencies coming out, which is so exciting that we're more open and we're more collective to it. But that adds another challenge, right? And we have the intersectionality of everything, right? It's easier for some people to win a race than others, right? And we have to acknowledge that too. And we have to acknowledge that there are real biases out there that are not just internal. And by saying that there's no biases, yeah.
Sorry, I'll let you finish, but
Okay.
maybe you can just clarify what you mean by neurodivergence.
Yeah, so neurodivergents are people who have different ways of thinking. So that's ADHD, autism, anybody on those spectrums, which we're finding a lot more people are coming out, specifically women are being diagnosed at higher rates, because before, again, a lot of the science and the doctors and the medical stuff plan all of the tells and the symptoms based on boys, right? So now girls are a lot at a higher pace. So we're seeing lots of that opening up. So thank you for asking that question. So we we're talking about the different biases and the different levels of external biases too. So we talk about confidence. We also have to talk about what that looks like from an external point of view, and we can't pretend that's not there. But how do we get to a point where we can acknowledge those biases in ourselves, right? And acknowledge them in others, seeing that happening, and still work through that in a way that feels authentic and good and safe to us, right? So the first exercise, I want you to bring out your notebook. I want you to bring out the piece of paper that you have. And this is our mindset, okay? So we're gonna get a little bit woo-woo. Yes? It's woo-woo, but why woo-woo works is, again, the neuroplasticity in our brain when we need to be kind to ourselves and when we start working on that dopamine section. So I want you to put 3 columns on that piece of paper and be creative. So column can be whatever you think. In the first column, I want you to write, never crosses my mind. In the second column, I want you to write, not sure. In the third column, I'd like you to write, need support. So I asked my musician friends, people in the industry, about the different things that they feel in terms of their confidence and the things that they have in terms of insecurities, right? These are really common ones. So I'm gonna read them out. When I read them out, I want you to place them in one of those columns, right? Either in the need support, in the not sure, or in the I really never think of that. First one, performance anxiety. Next one, self-doubt. Comparison to others. Rejection and criticism. Fear of failure. Perfectionism. Imposter syndrome. Lack of recognition.
Sorry, lack of.
Recognition.
Time gets slower.
Yeah, of course. And if you need me to go back, we'll go back again, yes?
What does lack of recognition mean?
Yeah, that could mean something along the lines of you feel like nobody is recognizing your work. That you feel very alone in your work that you're doing because you feel like you're not being recognized enough. Creative blocks. financial instability. And balancing in artistic integrity along the side of corporate success. Now I'm going to read these out again, and if you feel safe to be vulnerable, I'd like you to raise your hand if this is in your need support column. Performance anxiety. Self-doubt. Comparison to others. Rejection and criticism. Fear of failure. Perfectionism. Imposter syndrome. Lack of recognition. Creative blocks. Financial insecurity. And balancing artistic integrity and commercial success. Now, isn't that interesting? Right? What I found most interesting is that almost all of us raised our hands for imposter syndrome. But if there's all of us in a room, is it even mathematically possible that all of us are imposters?
It's possible.
Is it possible? Right.
It shows up in pi somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. In pi somewhere. 3.14, 2, blah, blah. I don't know the rest of it. But I find that so interesting when we talk about imposter syndrome. The fact that we all feel like imposters means that it's something more than us individually. That means that it's a collective. That means it's something going on in our society. So how do we be the change? How do we change that in ways that feel good so that we can also help change others, right? Because again, when we talk about those dopamine and that oxytocin, when someone confident comes up to us, we actually get that dopamine and oxytocin hit. Which means that if we are confident to somebody else and we lock up with confidence, they also take that hit. And that's how a small place that we can start changing the people around us. So now I promise we're not going to stay in this yucky part for a little bit. I know everyone's like, oh my God, we all have imposter syndrome. Thanks, Alyssa. We knew that. That's why we're here. But now what? So I want you to go into that need support, and I want you to circle the one that like really stood out to you. That one that was like, ooh, yeah, that's really sticky. And if a specific insecurity comes up around that, I want you to write it down. So let's take like an example. Let's take imposter syndrome, for example. Maybe that insecurity that comes up is I'm not good enough to be in the room, right? Maybe that's I don't have enough experience. I want you to be a little bit more specific on an insecurity that can come up. If nothing comes up, we can also stick with imposter syndrome. That's okay as well. Yeah.
Could you read them in order? Because I didn't write them down. I just have a bunch of X's.
Sure. I'll read them again. Performance anxiety, self-doubt, comparison to others, rejection and criticism, fear of failure, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, lack of recognition, creative blocks, financial insecurity, navigating the industry, and balancing artistic integrity. Yeah. Does anybody want to share what that specific insecurity is? Yeah.
I find the performance thing, definitely it's something that I want to overcome because I find that it blocks my ability to be myself and so I struggle with it. It's probably the one thing that I've really fought more than anything. And I think it feeds all the other stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We love a self-aware king.
Yeah.
Beautiful. How about yourself?
My biggest one is rejection and criticism
Yeah.
of my behavior because I don't have the ability to read kind of conventional social cues.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And now I want to talk about the science behind this, right? The reason why these insecurities feel so like yucky is because they actually elicit pain. right? Our brain actually tells us that we are in pain, physical pain, when we think of these things, when we think of insecurities, because our ancestors long ago, if we were rejected, we were kicked out of the community, right? And therefore, we possibly were living on our own, probably couldn't make it, right? So we were kicked out of a community because we were rejected. We realize, we learn that we cannot be rejected, right? In order to be safe, we have to play with the social cues. But that was when, way back when, right? That was when we didn't have this society that we do now. But now it is okay and we are safe if we're rejected, right? But our brains don't know that, and our brains think that we are physically going to die when we are rejected because it elicits that pain response. So I want you to know that these insecurities are not a negative thing. These are the ways of our brain keeping us safe, right? But again, let's go back to the fact that we can recharge our brain and we can start building new pathways to make this just a little bit easier and make it a little less painful. So that's what we're gonna do now. So I encourage you, if it feels good in your body and if it feels safe, I encourage you to close your eyes. If for any reason you don't feel great about closing your eyes, you're welcome to keep them open. You're also welcome to just walk around the room if it gets a little sticky. And I want you to think about that insecurity that comes up for you. Yeah, I hear some breathing. And I want you to recognize, is it in a certain area in your body? Maybe it's in your stomach, maybe it's in your chest, maybe it's in your head. It is not a right or wrong to feel anything. Everything is okay. But if you can feel it, I encourage you to put your hand on it. Does it have a certain shape? Maybe a certain color? Is it close up to you? Is it far away? I want you to take one more breath in this space. I know it's yucky, and thank you for being here with this. And I want you to say in your mind, you have a space in me. You are allowed to be in me. You are a part of me. You are not bad. When you're ready, I encourage you to open your eyes. Does anybody want to share what that felt like? Pretty gross, right? So now, what can we do, right? We know this insecurity is there. We know where we feel it. I want you to be 10% kinder to yourself. And I want you to write this down. Think of that insecurity and be 10% kinder. Let's talk about my body image. Being like, oh, I hate my body today, right? 10% kinder might be, I own a body, right? It's neutral. We don't have to lie about it. We don't have to say I'm the most beautiful person in the world, but I own a body. Does anybody want to share what their 10% kinder looks like?
Allowing myself to actually have a negative thought, that drives me down, and just say, hey, it exists, and acknowledging it, and moving on, and moving on. That way it's been better.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
It's being 10% kinder, I guess.
Absolutely. Because in my mind, neutrality is way better than toxic positivity, right? If we can get to a neutral point where we're like, just feels neutral. Doesn't feel good or bad, just neutral. That's when we can make good decisions, right? So I encourage you, if you feel good, I want you to close your eyes again. And we're gonna do that same exercise, but repeating this 10% kinder to yourself. I own a body. I'm allowed to have negative thoughts. And if you can feel it, put your hand on that space. Does this have a certain color, maybe a shape? Maybe it's close, maybe it's far away. If you can't feel anything, that's completely okay too. This is not about judging what we're feeling to see if it's different or the same. It's just about acknowledging that it might be different. And when you're ready, let's open those eyes. Does anybody want to share? Was there a shift? Was it the same? How do we feel? Go ahead. Yes.
Maybe about the same, but I guess the thought process, like instead of body image, it's more thinking like classroom or whatever. It's thinking like, I am good at music.
Yeah.
These people just don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
It's okay that they don't get it. Like, I know that I'm good at this, and that's enough.
Yeah. Who else kind of feels that? Maybe that's true, right? Maybe that's true for everybody. Maybe we are good at music, regardless of what anybody else says. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to share? Okay, we're out of the sticky part. Let's go to 20% kinder. What does that look like? Let's go up one more step. What does a little bit kinder than that look like for you? If anybody needs examples, please let me know too.
Mine was really more about working hard.
Yeah.
That I worked hard on this. So that's my acknowledgement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Regardless of how it's received, I worked hard on it.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing.
Take that one step further. I worked hard on this, and somebody paid me for this, regardless of So it was a paycheck. That was proof.
Yeah. How do we feel about maybe closing down our eyes one more time and seeing how that feels? Yeah, let's close our eyes. Maybe take a deep breath. And acknowledge, where do we feel this in the body? And if you feel it, put your hand on that. Does this feel lighter? Maybe heavier? Does it have a certain color or a certain shape? Is it close to us? Is it far away? And let's sit with this feeling just 1 second longer. And when you're ready and it feels good, let's open our eyes. How was that? Was it somewhere different? Was it the same place? Was it lighter, heavier? Does anybody want to share what that looked like for them? Yeah.
It feels heavier for me.
Yeah.
Just because there's kind of mixed feelings in me. Part of me is like, oh yeah, some people actually like you and are your friend. And the other part of me is like, I shouldn't have chopped top just then. I feel gross.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what I want to encourage you, and anybody who felt yuckier and anything that felt heavier, it's not a bad thing. It's just that we are trying a new neural pathway, or we're trying something new, and it can just feel a little bit scary too, right? And like I said, these are all tools in your tool belt. You might like this exercise. You might be like, yeah, okay, I see it. You might be like, we're good. That's not my favorite. But when we're feeling something a little bit heavier, that's totally okay, right? Because we don't need to look at it. We don't need to question if it's good or not. We can just be able to feel. And what if we just allow ourselves to feel? Well, I shouldn't have said that. And, right, I also have people who love and respect me. Does anybody else want to share? Beautiful. All right, so this is an exercise that works really well as we repeat it and as we continue up that repetition of it. So when you have those insecurities, I encourage you to be able to go to this place and kind of work your way up that 10% at a time. It can either be writing it down, you can feel it, or you can just have it in your mind and you can just take the next step. How did you think of that exercise? Was it helpful? Were you kind of like, both options are totally fair?
It's very similar to like what you go through in therapy with, like, I think it's EMDR, whatever the literature says about that, but kind of like that reprocessing of neural pathways. Like you're saying, like, you know, releasing, like making the neuroplasticity more tangible there. Like you're releasing the right chemicals into your, like you're naturally releasing your own good chemicals into your brain to assist with your own regrowth and rebuilding. So
Yeah.
It's a lot of little steps, but it's like you have to do 1,000 little steps to get up that big step. But once you're there, all of a sudden you can look back and it's like, holy smokes, I've actually climbed quite a ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And the nice thing about this, and also the challenging part, is our perivagal nerve starts working, right? So with that, as we kind of started working that ladder, I'd like to give us a little bit of a break, grab something to eat, grab something to drink, and kind of have just like a little bit of time to kind of let that go, maybe shake it off a little bit, because it can feel a little bit yucky, right? It can feel a bit yucky because our brain is not used to it. So take a little break, grab some food, maybe meet back here in about 15 minutes. Does that sound good? So this side, we are creating our value proposition, okay? Who has ever thought about having a why rather than a what when you were asked what to do, like what you do? Yeah. Does anybody have a why, kind of they typically say? Yeah.
Just to connect with others.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's a good one, hey? To connect with others.
And I like what you just said about healing.
And healing,
I
yeah.
was talking about that.
I love that too, right? Because maybe that is our why. Maybe that's our why. We get into music because we want to heal ourselves and other people, right?
Sure.
We want to build that community. And again, we kind of talked about that earlier. Typically, when I see, when I ask people what they do or tell me about yourself, they go directly to, this is my actual role, right? I'm an artist, or yeah, I'm a musician, or I'm a videographer, or this is what I do. But often we don't go directly to like the why. So what would it look like if when somebody asks us like what our thing is, what do we do, if we start with the why rather than the what? So that's what we're gonna do today. So that could look at the difference of, I'm a country artist versus I'm a country singer who's played over 100 shows and I know how to get the party started. I always show up on time. I always show up on time and I ensure that the entire audience is engaged, right? It's the why for us, but it's also the why for who we're talking to. Right? When we're chatting with somebody, specifically if we're looking for, maybe we're looking to talk about a record label, right? And they ask, what do you do? You say, well, I'm a country artist. Okay. Right? But when we start to find a why that both fits ourselves and then also fits people that we're talking to and kind of bridge that gap, that's when we can really start finding those networking experiences, like we talked about, a little bit more beneficial for us and everybody around us. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to create our own value proposition. When we think about this, we're going to start getting into what sets us apart and what makes us unique, right? I'm sure in other workshops and other places in the industry, you probably do work on like what sets you apart. Have you guys like put down like 10, 5-10 things that set you apart? Have you done an exercise with this before? Yeah, kind of. We're going to do it right now. We're going to do it kind of a little bit like this. Okay. So what I want to do is I want you to get your piece of paper and I want you to write a couple sentences. Let's start with 5, if that feels good. It might be 3, it might be 10, however you can think of things that set you apart. Yes, many of you in here are musicians, right? But what makes you different? What makes you unique? And this can be something like, I show up on time all the time, right? I'm not saying that all musicians don't show up on time, but maybe that's what sets you apart. Maybe you're like, I'm always there, right? Maybe what sets you apart is, I know how to communicate really well on and off stage. Maybe what sets you apart is I can bring my authentic self to the stage, right? And when you think of these unique things, I'll give you about like 5 minutes to think of those unique things that you have. All right, does that feel good? And we're gonna add to this as well, okay? So the next thing I want you to write down and just start thinking about is why are these unique things important to your audience? So let's say we're in a networking opportunity. Let's say we're in front of a record label, right? We're still in front of somebody who might be able to, help us in our career, right? But again, we do not go to record labels just because they can help us. We find things that we have in common, right? But why is it beneficial? Or maybe you're chatting with someone who's gonna hire you, maybe a venue, right? Why is it beneficial to this audience, these unique things?
But they want to feel like they're bringing somebody special in.
Yeah, for sure they do. Yeah, doesn't like think of like if you had a venue, right? You'd want to bring somebody super special into, right? That's why these things that you're unique would help. And everybody might have a different one too. Does anybody else have something else about like maybe why like a venue would want to bring you in? Like why these unique things that you do? Maybe one of your unique things, let's talk about, you should always show up, right? You always show up, you're always professional. A venue might look at that and say, yeah, okay, like even if, this person over here might be like, have more songs or more well-known songs, this person always shows up. So maybe that is super beneficial, right? Maybe that thing that makes you unique is actually what sets you at being beneficial to a venue. Sorry, one?
Steve Grappelli versus Django Reinhardt.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, yeah, I don't really know, but yes, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure that's a real thing.
Pretty deep, right? Deep option.
Yeah, I was like, wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you like how I was like,
Sedimentary
yeah, for
was
sure.
his name, or,
Okay.
That was fine, yeah.
So yeah, maybe write down like one or two of those benefits of like why your unique things that you bring to the table are important to that venue, to that producer, to that whoever is in that networking situation of who you want to connect with. And if we've thought of these things that are beneficial, let's also think about how it can either increase their pleasure. Yes, I know everybody's like, well, if I have to. No, either increase their pleasure or decrease their pain, right? Again, let's talk about that experience of maybe your unique thing that you show up, right? And it matters to that venue because you're going to be there. And it's going to increase pleasure because they're going to sell more drinks because people are not waiting around for a band and aren't going to leave. And it decreases pain because now those people are going to continue to come back, right? They're going to be like, oh yeah, this band is always on time. They're always fantastic. They always crush it, right? So think about how these things that set you apart, these unique things, can either increase pleasure or decrease pain of the person you're trying to connect with. Again, that can be venues, producers. That could also just be, a friend or family. Maybe you're looking for a new bassist, right? Maybe that person is your audience in this point of view. And while you're doing that, let's play a little bit of music, but I'll take off the deep sea fishing music. I'll put on our guy, William Prince. How are we doing? Do we need one more minute, or are we feeling cool to move on to the next piece? Feeling cool? Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start chatting with each other. We're going to get the room involved with each other a little bit. I want you to break off into people of two, maybe of three if that feels good for you too. And I want you to express and tell the person beside you or person behind you what sets you apart, what makes you unique, right? Why that's important, and then also how that increases pleasure or reduces pain. So let's get into groups of two and we can start kind of just chatting about that. We'll give, yes, just 2 minutes. It's gonna be a speed round. All right, team. I hear some great conversations. Thanks so much for being so open and having these really cool connections. I also hope that you met somebody super cool that eventually later tonight when you're at the shows, you can walk up to them and you can be like, hey, we chatted. But I want you, well, tell me first, how did that feel? Like chatting with other people about like what sets us apart, what makes us unique. Was there any big kind of takeaways there? Cool. Yeah.
Yes, I feel like I'm speaking so much. I'm like, should I be talking this much?
I love it.
I think the big takeaway here is just how we've been talking about how, as performers, or whatever, like, well, even teachers are performers, but as we are sharing with an audience, we are giving a piece of ourselves, but the audience is receiving that, but they're also interpreting that and interpolating that into their own experience, and then that reflects back out of them to the performer. So it's kind of a reciprocal experience, and I think that is where the communication happens. Is when both parties are positively reciprocating, it's magical, and sometimes you have that experience where the audience is maybe unwilling to accept what they're receiving, or they're unwilling to, be honest with themselves or whatever, and that, sends a different message back. And all of a sudden, I think that's where a lot of that imposter syndrome might come from. Now I'm saying it out loud, it's just like, am I doing this right? And it might not even be us, it might be that the audience isn't there yet. They're not willing to be honest with themselves, and we see that and we feel their impostoring reflected back on us. Maybe I'm just spitballing.
No, it's a girl.
Yes, 100%. Yes. And one thing that I love about that is that, again, when we have these communications and we think about like what our unique thing is, sometimes that's nonverbal, right? Sometimes that has nothing to do with a conversation. Sometimes it's that feeling when you're on stage, right? Sometimes it's walking up and just knowing what you deliver and being able to focus on what you deliver while still connecting with that audience. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, because yeah, it's not always verbal. It's sometimes and often it's nonverbal, right? Thanks for sharing that. Anything else? Any big other takeaways, big common themes that we see?
I had a weird moment when I was we were chatting, and one of the things that we do in our duo is we play songs that we've had recorded by other people.
Okay.
And I use the word hit songs because in a very specific genre, John very well intentionally said what hit songs. I'm curious, and as I was saying it out loud, I'm like, oh, maybe they're like not hit songs at all because they're in a specific genre. So I started to do the imposter thing as I'm speaking. I'm like self-editing and trying to like it was just like a moment where I feel like I still need to hold up a mirror and like own that instead of like questioning my own validity in that moment, right?
What a cool like experience to be like ding ding ding. There's a little nugget.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Anybody else?
What you said was really good. The thing you said about the audience.
Oh, the audience. So, we were chatting about like sometimes when you're performing or when you might be teaching, at your job, you feel like you're doing your best, but then the audience, I was just like, maybe the audience isn't ready to receive.
Yeah.
They're not open to your knowledge, but they're not ready to receive it yet. It's not on you.
Boom. Say that again.
So the audience isn't ready to receive your knowledge or what you know or what you're good at. They're just not there yet. It has nothing to do with you.
Can we say boom on 3?
Boom, 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 boom. And that is exactly why, how confidence comes into this, and exactly why when we set the side apart to start working through those insecurities and have a really prepared knowledge of who we are, that when that happens and we're like, yeah, people aren't receiving it. Like, guys, imagine like even like what I do this, the neutrality ladder in some spaces, no one talks, right? And that's okay too. And that's just not the right fit, right? But that's could be really scary. But it's not about you. And I love how you said that. Because no one gives a fuck about you except for the people that give a fuck about you, right? Right. So now what I want you to do, and the reason why this exercise is so powerful, is when we have a prepared answer for, well, what do you do, right? Like, it helps us be able to articulate exactly what we do in the way that we want to do it without being like, yeah, let me tell you like what I do. But instead it like allows us to like really have like a honed in version of who we are and why we do it. So with that, I want you to, with all of the knowledge that you took, I want you to write like a 3-sentence value proposition, right? Now I use the term value proposition because like a lot of people in marketing and sales kind of understand this, but this is also kind of your why, right? Like write something about why and why it matters for people and why it matters to you, right? Like a 3-sentence that when somebody asks you, what do you do? This is what you're now gonna tell them. Who feels ready? We feel ready? Do we need another song? I think let's go on. I know there's some other things going on, big things going on today that we wanna get into. So I would like to encourage everybody, I'd like you to, if you feel good, to stand up and tell me and tell the group what sets you apart, what makes you unique. So that for the rest of the weekend, when somebody asks you what you do, this is now what's on the top of your mind. This is the preparation of what you can tell people. What do I do? Who wants to go first? Yeah. Tell us.
I don't know if this is food or what, but this came.
Heck yeah, give it to me.
I connect with people, sharing my heart in the moment, whether it be in song or a conversation after. They both show my openness to be myself and sharing my songs and my voice, all in hopes of us having a collective aha moment.
Yeah, buddy. That's awesome. Yeah. And doesn't that feel better than like, oh, I play music or I'm a musician? Yeah. And I mean, obviously, there's different situations where like I'm a musician is better, but I really, really love that. Thank you for sharing that. I see into your heart a little bit there. Who wants to share next? Yeah.
It's funny because this is actually helping with like values that I'm trying to put on like my website that I'm putting together as well.
Right?
But real quick, I help others grow and achieve their musical best, whatever that looks like to them, through my unique skill set, knowledge, and experiences.
Yeah. Heck yeah. And again, the sales brain in the back of my mind. This is why it's boring. Does anybody else want to share? Yeah.
Sure. So I'm in a duo called Scarlett Butler with my husband. We are an awkwardly charming team that shares the love that we have for one another and for music with our audiences. We have written songs, some of that you may have heard on the radio for other artists. So if you love love and you love harmonies and great songs, you might love us.
Isn't that juicy? That's delicious. Beautiful.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah, it's delicious. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else want to share? Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. Hi, my name is Miar Lekran. I am a magic folk pop artist, and I'm a voice for neurodiversity and finding yourself while battling stigma.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's beautiful. Anybody else?
Sure, I'll go.
Yeah.
I make events fun by emceeing and DJing. I care for my community by being a good auntie, and I care for society by doing anti-colonial education.
Yes. Beautiful. That's what I heard about there, yeah.
Coming back into music after a 20-year hiatus, I'm a drummer and musician with grateful wisdom, sharing my joy of what I love.
And how beautiful. And I heard just like when everybody's talking, I hear different words come out. For you it was like wisdom. For me it was like love, right? And we can like think of these words when we're on stage. We can be like, I am love, right? I resonate love. I resonate wisdom. That's what sets me apart. So I want you to, as we go into the rest of the weekend, as we go into our performances, as we go into our emceeing, as we go into our drumming, whatever that looks like for you, I want you to remember that this is what sets you apart. This is what makes you unique. So when somebody asks us, we now know what to say. But when we're on stage, this is also what makes us so special, right? And I mean, I'm the generation where everybody told us we were special, right? But maybe we are, right? Maybe you are as well. So with that, I'm going to end the session, the workshop today. I know there's lots of stuff going on today, but is there any questions, comments, anything before we close up?
Just a question on the sort of body image side of things. Are there any like tips and tricks that like particularly in advance of shows, I feel like sometimes that can be a distracting energy, just like, did I get the right outfit? Whatever. Yeah.
Number one is make sure the clothes fit and that they're comfy, and that when you have clothes that are a little bit too small, just to throw them out, right? And then not look at the size of those pants. Like as soon as we feel tight in something, then we feel like a little yucky, right? So that's like one really like good tip that can be really helpful. The other one is like honestly like thinking of that neutrality of being like, I'm so much more than like what my body looks like. Although I know it's hard because as a business musician, we also are like judged on our looks, right? But really thinking about like, I give so much more than just the way that I look, and like reminding yourself that on before work, that like before you go on, just like really sitting there yourself and reminding yourself of that. Beautiful. Well, I'll stick around if anybody wants to kind of chat with me one-on-one at all and wants a little bit of just like advice in other situations that you didn't feel great about like saying out loud. I'll be here till the end of the hour. But yeah, feel free to keep talking, keep hanging out here. Feel free to pop out. I know there's a show that a lot of people wanted to go to at 11:30. So so nice to meet everybody. Yeah, thank you.